Hello, fiends, friends, and familiars. This is Matt Orozco, aka Macabre Matty, here at Macabre Daily, and we're here with another amazing interview. In fact, I'm joined by, well, full disclosure, I happen to know this person before this interview. Important to acknowledge that I have a good friend of mine, Amin Amat, here to talk about his upcoming comic book. But before we get too far into that, now we know who Amin is. Just give a bit of context around the book he's working on. So, The Road to Oz, Chapter 1 is currently funding on Kickstarter. As of last checking, it's 65% funded and it has until May 12th. So, Amin, I'm so happy that you and I finally get a chance to have this conversation because we always talk just as friends, but it's nice now that we're able to talk about work you're putting out there. So just tell our viewers, listeners, however people are accessing this, uh, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hey guys. Yeah, hi, I'm Amin. I've been a comic illustrator for a good 20 years. I will say on and off, but I've done work for Moonstone Books, IDW, Tapestry, Comics, Marvel. There's probably a few that I'm kind of missing, but I would say like those first few are the ones that I did the most work. That was the most visible. Especially I think the first book I put out or got out was probably Buckaroo Banzai Origins. That one was a lot of fun because I got to work with the directors of the movie, W.D. Richter and Mac Raj. And that was a lot of fun because I really got a lot of insights into the movie. I also got
Such
insights
a
on
strange
deleted
movie
scenes.
too.
Yeah, I got insights on deleted scenes that you get glimpse of in the movie, but they were just like, yeah, we wanted to do this and this, so we added all that into the book since it was like an origin story, and and just being able to work with them was kind of like, I guess for anyone who's known of that property and is into pop culture, that was like really a lot of fun, kind of like getting a lot of insight and seeing behind the scenes from this particular project. Then the next one I got picked up was Kolchak the Night Stalker, and that one was actually a
Big Kolchak
Richard Matt.
fan.
Yeah, it was a Richard Matheson script for a TV movie that was never made.
Was it going
And
to be like
so
an update for like one of the older ones they did back in like I think the 60s, I want to say, or
you know
70s?
what? I from the script that I was given, it looks like it was a standalone.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
who knows if the early drafts were, at least the script that I was given, it's definitely a standalone. So yeah, there are some instances where you kind of need to know why Kolchak does what he does, and that became kind of like a thing for me when I was given the project, was to try and introduce a little bit more of that, because he's a reporter and he likes to get in trouble because he's trying to look for something a little bit more. So I always try to make sure that we showed a lot of the kind of like him in the newsroom and pushing that along in his interactions with the editor in chief, which obviously, I kind of dived a little bit into like the Jay Jameson sort of like interaction with Peter Parker, just kind of like menacing and
The uh
really
the
just kind of like
the
being.
police lieutenant or captain to the rogue
Yeah, yeah,
detective.
yeah, and I was given a lot of liberty by Moonstone, specifically Joe Gentile, on what I wanted to do and where I wanted and how I wanted to push it, as long as I was obviously keeping it within the script. So I think for me, it was a lot of fun visiting that character because I think this was like it was a really big project. It was a lot of fun. I fought a lot to get it, and then when I actually got to do it, then I really kind of pushed myself in terms of the storytelling and really kind of pushed like the atmospheric aspects within the graphic storytelling to make it really a lot of fun. So the last piece of that book was a lot of fun. Got to do. I really dived a lot into like that horror side of me, of like showing a little bit more here and there, but not enough. So there was a little Hitchcock-ish here and there, of just kind of like just enough to get you going.
Made for
Um,
TV levels of violence.
yeah, exactly. But we can show a little bit more. Yeah, and then yeah, from that I ended up doing work for IDW. Um, with Code Geronimo, which was the book about the raid on Osama bin Laden. That got a lot of press, and then from there on in, I did like the adaptation for Iron Sky, which was like that movie about the Nazis in space. Really, that's what it's about.
Pretty much like space Nazis with like steampunk
Yeah,
vibes.
yeah. We were given a lot
Zeppelins.
of creative liberty on that project too. So it was kind of, I really wanted to see more behind the scenes of the actual filming because I think they were just finishing up the production while we were doing the drawing.
Oh, so this was
But
like parallel work you were doing.
yeah, but
Oh,
we weren't
cool.
given a lot of stuff, so I just pretty much had to kind of like push into what I felt was like the right angle and the right look and everything else for that at the time. That was a real fun project to do, and then from there on in, just did like a lot of smaller projects, and then just kind of went off into web development for a while, just kind of giving it a break, and then this particular project, ooh,
Yeah, I was gonna ask you like where like
yeah.
how did you arrive at this concept? Because I just to kind of give the viewer like folks some context, it is a return to Oz type of story, but it takes a different approach in that it takes, it makes some assumptions that maybe things didn't work out. So how
Uh-huh.
did you get to this point?
So I think around the time where I was gonna take a break, I had the imagery of the scarecrow and the girl, kind of just popping up in my head, constantly. So I drew a couple sketches, and I was like, okay, this is cool. And then I decided, well, if I just push myself and just announce that I'm going to do a book, then I'll eventually write it, which was a bad idea because I
Yeah,
was
once you
I
put
was
it
able
out there,
to.
then you're accountable, right?
Yeah, that was not a good thing to do because I had artwork out and had promos started. I think this was 2000. I want to say 2008, and then I
Oh, so
realized,
we're going way back.
yeah, I remember doing it and saying, oh yeah, it's gonna release like spring of 2008. And come December of 2007, I didn't have anything. I didn't know what the story was. I was like, I couldn't even do like a two-pager if I wanted to. And I decided, you know what, that this is a bad idea. And to massacre, current context, no pun intended, but to massacre the concept at that point because I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't have anything. I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna go ahead and just take it down and put it on the back burner because I really enjoyed what I had started, but I didn't know where it was going to go. And so, yeah, it was on the back burner for almost 20 years in terms of just kind of like, I feel that having more life experience is really kind of what eventually kind of fed it a little bit more. And I think that during the pandemic is when I really when I decided just to revisit it. Just like everybody during the pandemic, I don't have anything else to do, so let's do that.
Dusting off old
Um,
hobbies and whatnot.
yeah, and I came to revisit it, and I was already reading. I was reading a couple books on writing and character development, and obviously looking at I forgot his name, but it was like about myths and legends. And so I came back Joseph Campbell in terms of how he talked about myths. So I was looking at that documentary, and I was like, huh. And I had already read Wicked, and I figured, okay, I liked how Wicked kind of took what we already knew and kind of made it their own, but it still fits in there. And I think that during the character development, I was thinking, what's the purpose? Why is it happening? And then that's where to start filling in the gaps. Because my original concept was like this psychotic, really kind of deranged scarecrow roaming around, haunting, and just creating havoc
I mean,
across.
there's still time to make that. I'm just saying
Yeah,
at
yeah,
some point.
that could be the side cut.
That's the one
And
shot.
yeah, and I was like, like I think kind of like as much as I would enjoy drawing illustrations of that, for the story to work, it just didn't. Not to say that it can't happen, but at least right now, no. And then as I started to kind of thinking about the purposes and the intentions of the characters, I think it just kind of made more sense of what was happening and how I was building this particular world. And then as I built it, then I started seeing how it was fitting with the original, Frank Baum books of Wizard of Oz and then the Land of Oz, and it fit perfectly between the two books without altering anything per se. Don't want to give any spoilers, but yeah, but the story in itself is
This is like the Shadow of the Empire of Oz
yes.
books, and that it exists
I
perfectly in
like
between two of the best films.
yeah, I like that reference. That's an
It's
honorable
a very
reference right
niche
there.
audience. It's going to be like Shadow of the Empire. The N60,
Yeah,
some will be the N64 game. The real ones will be like the book. They're really, really good. Like probably the best Star Wars
yeah,
fiction novel.
and then as Uber geeks that we did both, so we were kind of like
Yes,
yes,
yes.
yeah, and I think what it became or what it came down to really was trying to create something that was unique and different, but still honoring the original source, you know, and not going. And I was like, okay, I could go really far from it, or I can do a slight spin of it. And so I ended up doing a slight spin, but still keeping a lot of stuff between the film and the books still within what I'm doing, and it all makes perfect sense. I think that was kind of like a fun thing to do. You know, I think for the for chapter one, when those read it, I took a lot of cues from Pulp Fiction in terms of how the story is told.
So
Um,
it's kind of like multiple stories all at once.
it's I think instead of being true linear, it kind of jumps between different spots. And that for it made perfect sense when I started doing it because I did try the linear and it seemed pretty boring. But then as
Yeah.
soon as I kind of moved like, oh, put this scene over here and this one over there, it's like, ooh, that's much more interesting. Um, and I took a lot of cues from that. You know, obviously not so much for this one, but later on, you know, a lot of film noir kind of inspirations on looks and kind of like that really sharp contrast. Not, you know, I have to say, you know, Nosferatu, from the 1920 film.
It might even be
Yeah, I
earlier than
look at
that.
that.
Yeah, it's somewhere around there.
Yeah, I still have that. I found like a YouTube copy of it someplace that I had it bookmarked. And I constantly revisit that. It's like, for a lot of like inspiration from German expressionism, especially when I'm inking. So I just really kind of want to capture like moods and stuff like that, which now that I've really dove deep into it for the second volume, which will be like, you know, chapters 5, 6, and blah blah. Blah. Definitely, it will be a little bit more darker, per se, and some of those I think it's really become an excuse to draw a lot of the stuff that I've always wanted to draw, but now I just take it into a really cool story and cohesively it's all going to make sense. And I think it's like it's really weird how it's true what they say that when you start building something that eventually the characters in the worlds will build themselves and they'll tell the stories and
Hmm.
you're just trying to catch up with them. So it's been really fun with this project so far because I did the first book and then immediately jumped into the second one and then immediately the third and the fourth. And it's funny what took me 20 something years to kind of really develop and the production itself only really took me about probably a year and a half in terms of like true production,
Wow.
which was fun and challenging, but it just flowed through. So it's just a matter of just capturing everything and trying to get on paper before it kind of escaped.
Well, it sounds like you had like given, I think one of the things that we hear from a lot of other creators that we speak to, filmmakers and others involved in the entertainment space, that there is this kind of element of like patience and like there is a bit of timing. That's the variable you can't control. Obviously in your world, it's a bit more, it's not as collaborative as you would see perhaps on a film set because you are kind of the sole creator and doing the majority of the work. But at the same time, you had the right, you needed that time to build up your own experience, your own kind of understanding of how to tell that story or what the story was even going to be. So I think there is something to that. Like when the time is right, it feels more effortless. As
No, it's
but
true. That is perfectly true. I mean, in this particular case, since I'm doing the writing and the artwork, the coloring for it, which I opted not to do because it would take way too long. I think if I was to color this, you know, R. Martin would probably have the next book of Game of Thrones out before I actually finish coloring. So I have two colorists, which is unique to do. Each one has their own styles, but it fits perfectly with the story. So I'm actually working with two colorists to have their coloring and kind of for different sections of the stories, as well as they will kind of mix and mash here and there. Um, I'm treating them as like my directors of photography, but to tell you the truth, because although I do have all the shots and everything set up, they're the ones that are really kind of giving it that last piece of the puzzle in order to make it really look great. And
Yeah.
I love how each of them work work for this particular world in sort of different moods. So it's a lot of fun trying to organize that as the director, to get these two DPs to kind of sync up and get everything ready to go. So it's gonna be a lot of fun working with them, but it's also gonna be a lot of fun when the readers kind of see how I've been able to kind of get this unification to go.
Yeah, I love that. You kind of have two people, two different points of view almost. And speaking of kind of the look of things and the style, I mean, you mentioned before that the story itself kind of fits very, very squarely in between the two books. And I'm curious to know like how much of, the Road to Oz is going to adapt what has already been done visually from the films or the books, because even just looking at the movies, right? You have Return to Oz, which is so wildly different in every feasible way from The Wizard of Oz. So to what extent is your interpretation going to leverage some of the previous work, but also what will be different?
So there is a lot where I'm carrying over from the first book and hints of from the second that are gonna be in there. Um, Funny enough, there's a lot of stuff that I did in this book that then later on I kind of revisited and realized, oh wait a minute, there's a lot of stuff that I use that's now kind of popping up in there. The I would say the cohesiveness of the storytelling between this project and the other two are are going to be it's going to be good for the fans. They're not going to be disappointed, and I'm not insulting anyone per
Yeah, and
se.
I guess is how much is going to be similar and what will be different? Because there are some like iconic looks, right? As far as like the I forget what the monkey guards are called. You know what I'm
Yeah,
talking
no.
about though. But to see your interpretation,
There's
I would imagine would be quite
the
interesting.
monkeys is the only one where I kind of went a little bit more realistic in terms of their portrayal. As for the main characters per se, being Scarecrow, Tin Man, Lion, and Dorothy, very slight variations. Although the only ones that you're going to see right now is Scarecrow, maybe Dorothy.
Maybe.
That
Wow.
even that's a spoiler at this point from what you're seeing in some of the promo stuff. And as for the other three, the other characters, they will pop up in the next volume. I do have that storyline set up. Pretty epic storyline from what I'm kind of gathering in terms of what I'm hinting by the time that this, you know, once you get to chapter 4 or book 4, you'll understand that there's a lot that's happened, that's going on in this particular timeline world, if you want to call it that. But it's still honoring, what the other books have. It just kind of, I guess, like in a Doc Brown sort of sense, just diverted into another timeline here
Yeah,
and there.
you're creating the Lollipop Guildverse now, is what you're doing. It looks like the
But
the
it all makes
Avengers
sense.
style,
Yeah,
the
but
Avengers
it
style Wizard of Oz movies
yeah,
we've
yeah,
always
but it
needed.
all it's all gonna make sense. When originally with the first iteration of the Kickstarter, I wanted the graphic novel so you could read it all in one sitting. That Kickstarter didn't fund, so now I'm doing it per chapter or per book. When you finish that fourth chapter, you'll definitely understand, like, oh, okay, and even with the first chapter, I've had a couple people that were looking at some of the pages that are not lettered, and they were understanding the storyline entirely, and they were already picking up on a few little things that I was putting in storytelling wise to tell the story even more. So that kind of made them really really interested on the series, because they're like, oh, there's a lot of other stuff going on here. So they know that once they see the dialogue, that it's going to be a whole nother level.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, Listen, I'm not the world's biggest Wizard of Oz fan, but I am a big fan of yours. So I'll absolutely, I've already put my money into the Kickstarter, so I'm a little biased. But um, as far as you mentioned you're putting out chapter one, and I know you kind of pivoted. What can folks expect in this first chapter? Um, as far as how much can you tell, I guess, about what people are going to see without giving too much away?
So chapter one will set up the premise on why do we see Scarecrow and this girl? Why, especially with the promo image, and why? What does it have to do with Kansas? They will also get a brief explanation on how the monkeys fit into play, how the Wizard of Oz played a role in all of this, and there will be a subtle hint here and there that'll be later explained, and between like chapters two, I would say 2 and 4, on some other elements that pop up. And there might be some other stuff. I do have at least an extra 2 pager, sort of like the printed Marvel after credits
Hmm.
of a particular scene that I think would be. I'm gonna have to draw it because I just can't get out of my head, and that one is gonna be really revealing on what's going on to everything else. I just don't know if to put that as sort of the tail end of chapter one or somewhere in chapter two, to not spoil too much. But it's it'll I'll figure it out in the next month or so.
Yeah, how quickly will you be churning out chapters after this? I imagine, folks like a cliffhanger, but also need to, we're in the era of streaming content. So how quickly can we expect a chapter two?
Chapter two is already penciled. I just need to do the ink work and then the coloring. So I think that once I see that chapter one is close to being funded, then probably I'll start to work really hard on chapter two and pretty much sending that off to the colorists. So they're probably going to be doing a lot of work between this one being funded and then the next one. So for me, it'll be I move on to chapter two. For the colorists, they're probably going to be working on chapter ones and two at the same time. And so that way that should put it where chapter two, if things go well, should come out, or at least for the Kickstarter, I should have it debuting within a month, if not 45 days, right after the end of this one, or give or take here and there. Like I do want to kind of make sure that people do get that first issue in their hands, to then be able to hit them with the second one. So they're they're not kind of like starving too long for the next
Well, that
chapter.
I don't know. It's kind of fun though, because I feel like there is a bit of nostalgia for like the way you used to get like series and comics. Like you would have to wait. I mean, up until the 90s, you would sometimes wait about a week, but it's like it. I think there is something. I don't know. Bring patience back, I guess, to some extent. But I have a few other questions for you, just more kind of about your background. At what point did you realize that you wanted to be an artist?
I think the art part kind of started a long time ago, as a kid. I think I didn't really take it seriously for the longest times. I did, at one point I wanted to be a fighter pilot, and then I wanted to be an architect. That didn't work out. And then I remember a friend of mine was like, "Well, you can't get into architecture school, but why don't you try comics? You can still build buildings and worlds." And I think that's where I kind of took that seriously. And then I think I was around 18. And at that point, that's where I went ahead and started doing looking at different schools that I could go to, because I could have taught myself, but I knew it was going to take a long time. And then I decided I'll just pick a school that works well for me, and then do that and dedicate myself to that. So that's when I went to the School of Visual Arts up in New York. Thankfully, I was going straight into art classes. So I had about 21 credits, I think. So literally from like 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. I was in drawing classes and art classes all the time. So that was my 4 year boot camp of like learning how to draw and storytelling, some other stuff. And then which still helps, it still comes
Yeah.
out to this day.
I mean, I think that's the part that a lot of myself included, it's hard to appreciate is that the craft takes time. You can't just natural talent doesn't carry you the entire way when it comes to art. You need to cultivate it, you need to grow it. And I think that yeah, I'm curious to know, like, were there any particular artists that you were really inspired by as far as their styles or things that you really drew your own inspirations from as far as how you created your own? Because yours is a very, just to give the readers a sense who haven't checked out, or the listeners a sense of who hasn't checked out the Kickstarter, you there is like this comic realism, and it's almost like minimal, but it's highly detailed. Like it's a very I don't know. I don't want to call it elevated comic art because it's like that puts a disservice to comic art. I think it's just there's this fine detail but minimal aspect to the way you put things down, and I think it I don't know, the white spaces speak just as much as the dark spaces. So
Yeah, I
what
would say
where'd you cultivate that from?
it's funny because it breaks off between like obviously my primary inspirations was like John Rita Jr., Klaus Janson, Alex Toth. He did a lot of character and costume designs for like Space Ghost, for example. So I think if you things like that for detailed stuff, like Jeff Darrell, Jim Lee, Silvestri, Jorge Langarang from Spain, not from Spain, but that's where he's known for. And even some of like the other artists, like Toulouse-Lautrec, Typolo, stuff like that. I think really it just became down to starting off with the designing composition stuff first, and then I kind of went into more of like the detail. I think as time has gone by, I've gotten faster in kind of
Mhm.
having this particular style come out where it looks much real, but there is a sense of surrealism into it, where it's you kind of can tell that it's real, but it's not real. But at least for these particular worlds that I'm drawing, there's enough believability to think that it could really exist. Um, yeah, but I'm usually a lot of black and white work. I'm trying to think. There was Chuck Close is another one too, which is super hyper realism. But I think when you really look down, it's like just a bunch of messy dots all together. And that
Yeah.
that for me has always kind of been like, oh, that's how you do it. But yeah, I've been inspired by a lot of stuff, and it kind of varies per day. Even I think Katsuhiro Otomo for sure has been like a big inspiration in terms of just kind of the detail, the backgrounds and stuff like that. Like it's envious to see him
Yeah.
draw like mega apartment buildings and destroy them all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to some people, perfection is everything, right? And it's a hard thing to be when you're an artist, but I mean, you, I think, I mean, obviously, I follow you on social media, but if others, you choose if you follow me, and you'll see is he's always drawing, sketchbooks on sketchbooks of pretty much everything. So I think that, I always have just been an admirer of the work you do casually, but to see it come to this head is pretty great. And I'm pretty excited to see what you're putting together because even though we know each other before this. Um, I've not seen much more than what anybody else has seen on Kickstarter. So, we do run a horror site over here. And while there are some horror tangentialities and adjacencies to the Wizard of Oz, and particularly the work you're doing with Road to Oz, I gotta ask you though, what are your top three horror movies?
Oh, oh man. Um, Evil Dead 2. I mean,
Okay.
definitely. I think I was like 16 when I saw that. I remember seeing the movie
I feel like
poster.
everyone was between the age of 12 and 16 when they saw
Yeah,
Evil Dead
yeah.
2.
I,
Like
I
it's
remember seeing the movie poster and that creeped me out, but it creeped me out so much that I need to see it. So it
yeah.
worked. It worked. Um, yeah, the other ones would be a tie. I'm a big fan of The Thing. I'm also a big fan of Blair Witch, but it's not so much the first movie. There was the recent one just called Blair Witch, which
Never
I
saw
saw with
that
my
one, but was
I saw
good.
that one with my brother. I thought that should have been the sequel because it
Hmm.
really kind of captured a lot of stuff in the first one, expanded a little bit upon the universe per se, and I was like, oh, um, you see, there's what's the one that Peter Jackson did?
Dead
Um,
Alive,
oh, dude, that
Brain Dead, or brain same.
no, Dead Alive. I saw Dead Alive when I was in college, and that for all intents and purposes blew my mind.
Yeah,
It
pun
was
intended.
I was just kind of like, this is genius. This is genius. You know, of course, having a priest say that he's going to kick ass for the Lord, and then he gets his ass whooped
With a New
was
Zealand
funny.
accent. Kick ass
Yeah,
for the Lord.
it was. Yeah, and of course there was the lawnmower on the chest scene. That to this day is something like I will somehow manage to do a scene like that and draw it because it just you have to do it with all the detail. It's just yeah, that movie was just way out there. Um, the Saw stuff is pretty good.
Are there
Um,
any movies are there any horror movies that you can't watch, like you're terrified of, or just the subject matter is too much?
I admit that the Human Centipede stuff. I got through the. I got. I think I actually I finished the first one. I just like, oh no, not.
Yeah, I haven't
That,
seen any other ones,
yeah,
so
that for me was kind of like, okay, let's go out there. You know, I thought the Hostel movies were okay and whatnot. Some of them were here, but yeah, the Human Centipede one was like, yeah, and then there's three of them. I think
note
there's
to
like three
self, no
players.
ass to mouth for a meme. That's the
You
that's
know,
not
you know the joke. You never go ass to mouth, man.
yeah, I get that's what they say. That's what they say. I don't know. I don't know who they are or why they say it, but that's what they say. Well, I mean, the floor is yours. Like, can I tell everyone a bit about where they can find you on social media and how they can find the Kickstarter? Anything else you want to plug or promote?
Yeah, I believe Matt will leave a link for the Kickstarter
Yes.
somewhere around. If not, you can just go to Kickstarter.com and do a search for The Road to Oz, and it'll pop up there. You can find me on Instagram under AAMAT, you know, Amin Amat. You can also find me as Amin Amat on Facebook and Twitter, aka X. Um, or you can just Google me and I'll pop up. You'll see me pop up. I'm quasi famous, and I guess in that sense. And yeah, if you can follow me and whatnot, and I'm pretty much open for comments and questions. So you can always just pop on and ask me questions, anything you like. And especially on my Instagram, I'm notorious for posting up quite a number of drawings and stuff on a daily basis because that's what I'm doing. So there may be some slow periods, but then also you'll get bombarded with it with a bunch of stuff. So always a lot of fun for me to post the stuff up, and of course I know that a lot of people they look forward to seeing some of the stuff that I'm posting up as well. Let it be little sketches to the more complex stuff that I'm doing. It's fulfilling, and a lot of people really get a kick out of it.
I mean, I do. But again, I'm biased. I've already acknowledged that bias, but I will go on to say that I will also make sure we put a link to the Kickstarter in the article for everyone, as well as the notes on YouTube. We'll also link. You didn't mention this to me. Maybe you're being too modest, but you have an online store where you sell your art, and I think you have something for everybody because you've got like Ronin, Japanese Ronin drawings. You've got zombies. I have a zombie Santa. You've got Mandalorian. I mean, there's a
Oh, I
pretty
got that. I don't know if you saw it. I got the bloater. I drew the bloater from Last of Us, but not like your the big ass one with all the crap on him. That was a lot of fun to draw, and that I do have prints of that available on the site as well.
so
So
if
I
you
mean,
just I mean support independent art and especially artists. So even if make sure to back the Kickstarter, but also check out the website and see if there's anything good you like there. Because original art is the best kind of art. But then again, I am biased. So with that in mind, I mean, it's been great. I'm
I'm here,
so
man.
glad we got a chance to do this. I'm really happy to see you've got this Kickstarter going, and as a friend and a supporter, I will always do whatever I can to make sure that people know more about your great work and art. But please, everyone, go check it out. And we will update everyone on how that Kickstarter is going and additional issues, and hopefully have you back again. I mean, to talk about what else you're working on.
Oh yeah, for sure. I do have one that you're gonna like. Give me a few months because I'm working on the outline for that one. But I think
Well,
you'll get a kick out of that one. So you'll be the first to know.
well, as far as me and my doctor know, I should be here. So touch wood.
All right.
Um, all right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. And as we always like to say here, be good, stay safe, and above all, watch more horror movies.
Always.